Hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you have never been here before, my name is Rachel and I am an indie author with over 50 books published, and I like to make videos helping you to become a writer too, or an indie author as I am. And I figure after writing 50 odd books that I know a thing or two, so I like to share. But having said that, even having written over 50 books, I am still on my own journey. I'm still learning things. The indie author landscape changes, not even year by year now, it's month to month. What I knew a year ago has changed, and so I like to talk about my own journey too. So I like to make videos about that. Today I want to talk about writing your book in 2026. But I want to talk about writing your first book in 2026, because I know there are so many videos out there that talk about finishing your book, but what about when you're writing your very first book? Probably the hardest book. I talk to lots of new writers and they're writing their first book and it's the one that takes them the longest. And my first book took me ages. I rewrote the thing 5 times. It took me years. I think I wrote it in 2004 the first time, and then I didn't publish it till way over 10 years later, and actually it became book number 10 of the series. But it's a weird long story, but it took me a long time, and I think the first book always takes you just that little bit longer than the rest of them, because finishing the first book teaches you everything. Typical. I had a phone call while I was recording, so I can't remember what I was saying, so we're just gonna carry on from here. Anyway, writing your first book, your very first book, the hardest one, that's what I was trying to establish, and it's okay, and I want to give you some tips and some advice on writing your very first book. What I will tell you about writing your first book though is, if you haven't actually started your first book and you have the idea of a book, or you're in that I've always wanted to write a book, just know this: you don't need an English degree to write a book. You don't need to have some exceptional English writing talent or storytelling talent, and you don't even need to have read every book in your genre. You just need a willingness to learn and a really good commitment to show up for your book and for yourself. So anyway, let's talk about how to write your first book. Although before we actually dive in to the nitty gritty of it, let's just talk a little bit about mindset, because this is one of the things I remember, and it's only been in the last few years when someone says, "What do you do for a living?" I'm like, I'm an author, or I'm a writer. It's been really hard to kind of accept that title for myself, even though it's what I've done for years, full-time author from 2016. And we get a lot of that imposter syndrome, especially when we're writing our first book, and we hide and we feel like we're not real writers. We feel like the idea is stupid, it's a waste of time. We might even have people in our lives, in our family, our friends, who are telling us those things too. Let me tell you this, that's a load of rubbish. I don't care whether it's you telling it yourself, or it's your spouse telling it you, or your sibling, or your friend, or whoever. Writing a book, telling a story is an amazing experience. And if you allow yourself to do it and you finish it, it's such a wonderful feeling to have finished that book, to have got the story down, to have lived and breathed through the characters that you've made, and don't let anyone else tell you otherwise, even if that person is yourself. And I don't think there's anyone in this planet any author, should I say, or writer, who has not suffered from self-doubt or doubt from outside sources. It comes at you in all shapes and sizes. I can tell you, I am in the middle of a book at the moment. It's driving me insane. I feel like I've been writing it forever, and I haven't. It's only a few months, and it doesn't feel like I've got an end in sight. And there are moments when I'm like, I'm just a crap writer. I should give it up. What am I doing? I can't write books anymore. My skill to write has gone. That voice never ever goes away. So if you have that voice when you're starting your first book, know this: it is just the little horrible monster that we for some reason have on our shoulders, and we just have to learn to shut up, basically. So, writing your first book, there are 3 fundamental truths that I need you to understand and accept. Your first book doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be good. It just has to be finished. You will learn more from completing one messy, chaotic book than spending 10 years endlessly, tirelessly trying to create a perfect book that you just never finish. I remember talking to author Kelly Armstrong, and she gave me the prospect of the trunk novels, and it was the novels that go in a trunk and never see the ever. No one ever sees them. And I have some of those. They are stories I've written. People have read them, but they've never been published. They never will be published. They will literally stay there. I see them on my hard drive and I'm like, they have such good memories. I had such a wild time writing those because I let my imagination just go. But they are so bad. But what those books taught me was about writing, it was about structure. I learned so much from them. And I always say that it doesn't matter what you're writing, your books, even if you never publish that book, even if you delete the words, they are never wasted words. So number one, your book doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be finished. Number two, you are allowed to be a beginner. We jump into books, writing books, and we compare ourselves to those authors we love to read, books that are published, or even getting a critique off our friend and someone's like, that reads like a first draft. Well, duh, you're allowed it to read like a first draft. You're allowed it to read messy. You are allowed to write a book like a beginner, and you're allowed to be a beginner, and you're allowed to ask beginner questions. You know, the questions that you might feel are stupid, because we all start somewhere. This is just literally how learning works. Number three, writing a book is not just about talent. It's about persistence. It's about showing up on the days when you don't feel inspired, when the words aren't flowing, when you'd rather literally do anything else. And that's what separates people from those who actually finish their books to those who dream about finishing their books. You can have the most talented writer on the planet, but if they never sit down and show up and write their first book, they don't have a book. You could be less talented, because no one's untalented. We all know how to tell stories. And if you don't believe me, just think about the time that you gossip with your friends. You are telling a story. So we all know how to tell stories. And if you just don't, think your talent is less, it doesn't matter. It's just about showing up. Okay, writing your book. So step one is choosing your idea. Sounds really basic. But I know, probably, as a beginning author, you probably have too many ideas. Not just one idea that won't leave you alone, because that's just the way it is. So let's try to break it down. If you're writing fiction, don't try and write the next Lord of the Rings. Don't plan out a 7-book epic fantasy adventure. Don't try and tackle every theme or every trope that you've ever loved or cared about in your first book. Start with something small and contained. One of the favourite things I like is when you're writing your first book is just write about one character dealing with one problem, or maybe a relationship that changes over the course of a story, or maybe even just a what if scenario that you genuinely find interesting. And here's a really good test. Can you explain your story idea to me in 3 sentences or less? If it takes you more than 10 minutes to explain your story to me, then it's probably too much for your first book. And that's not me being horrible or anything. I read the book 11/22/63. It is one of my favourite books. It's a book by Stephen King. It's someone goes back in time to stop the Kennedy assassination. That's it. Do you see how easy? 2 sentences. And Stephen King does a note at the end, and he talks about how he originally started this when Kennedy was originally assassinated. So it was like 67, but I think he started it in the early 70s. But he was too much of a baby author, and that book just wasn't for him right then. So he shelved it. And he wrote it some 30 years later. Now, even the great Stephen King was in a place to admit that that wasn't the book for him. It wasn't a book he was never going to write. It just wasn't a book that he was ready to write yet, because he didn't have all the years of experience of writing books. So when I'm saying to you, just pick something simple and not complex, it's not trying to say that you're not good enough to do the complex books and the big books. You are, and they are in your future. But the thing with writing your first book is you are learning a process, and to do that you need an easy story to write. You have to save your magnum opus for book 3, book 4, book 10, way off into the future, after you've learned how this whole process works. Now, if you're writing non-fiction, and I'm not really a non-fiction writer, although I do have some non-fiction books out, ask yourself, what do I know that other people need to learn? What problems can I solve? What story from my life could genuinely help someone else? Good first non-fiction books often include how-to guides based on your actual expertise or experience, a memoir about one specific time or theme of your life, not your entire life story. Maybe self-help focused on one clear transformation, not everything you've ever learned. The key principle here with writing your first book is to pick something that you could actually finish, and it's not like your dream book that carries the entire weight of your artistic identity. And it's not even the book that you think will make you famous. Make it something manageable, but something that you're going to be able to stick to for the next 6 to 12 months. Step 2, set yourself a realistic goal. I'm going to tell you some numbers that might actually sound scary if you don't know them, but just stick with it because this is how we're going to make this really manageable. So how long should your first book be? So if you're writing a short novel, you want to aim for about 50 to 60,000 words. This is ideal place for your first book. A standard novel is about 70 to 80,000 words, and then a longer novel is about 90,000 words or more. I don't suggest doing that for your first book. I would try and stick to the 50 or 60,000 words. It's really easy just to tell one story, one character, one plotline in 50,000 words, and it's a nice small chunk of change that you can just and not get all messy with. If you're writing non-fiction, probably that 40 to 60,000 words is a good place. And okay, so let's say you're going to aim for the 50,000 words, and maybe that actually just feels massive to you right now anyway. You know, if you've never read a book, 50,000 words can feel huge, but it's like Mount Everest. To climb Mount Everest, you're going to take one step at a time. So to write a 50,000 word book, you're going to take it one day at a time, one writing session at a time, whatever it is at a time. We're going to break it down into steps. So if you write 200 words a day, that's not a lot. Maybe that's the size of a paragraph. Maybe it's a 10-minute writing sprint or whatever. If you wrote 200 words a day, you would finish your book in 250 days. That's about 8 months. Now, I am not talking about a fully publishable, edited book. What I'm talking about here is your first draft, okay? So we're not going back, we're not doing rewrites, we're not doing edits. If you just wrote 200 words a day and kept moving forward every day, 8 months you'd have 50,000 word book. If you wrote 300 words, for example, that would probably take you about 15 to 20 minute writing sprint, depending on how fast you type. You'll finish that book in 167 days, which is less than 6 months, I believe. And if you wrote 500 words a day, you would finish your book in 100 days, which is less than 3 months. Over 3 months. It's around 3 months. Here's my recommendation tip for you. Aim for about 250 to 300 words per day. Don't go back and edit them when you write them. Just keep always moving forward. Doesn't matter if you think they're wrong. It doesn't matter if there's a little voice nibbling at you that, you know, you need to go back and change something. Believe me, you don't. You just need to get to the end of this book. But 250, 300 words is achievable on even your worst days, unless you're really unwell or something like that. Like, don't force yourself. But on those I can't be arsed days, 250 words is something you could try and just make yourself show up for. And if 250 words doesn't work for you, pick your own number. What works for you? What can you do? How fast can you type? You know, what's manageable for you? 250 words might only seem little if you know that you can do a 2,000 word writing session. But if you can only do one 2,000 word writing session a week, maybe a 250 words a day is much better, if you see what I mean. Do something that's manageable for you. Basically, the thing is consistency and just showing up. Step 3 is understanding the basic structure. And before you start panicking that you need plot diagrams, charts on the walls, cards, post-it notes, I don't know, all the tools that many authors use to plot their books, you don't. I'm just going to give you the simplest, most easiest structure of story that exists in our world today. And it's pretty much called the 3-act structure. You've probably heard of it, and it works for about 90% of all books. Act 1 is the beginning. This is 25% of your book. You introduce their problem. You introduce your character, or the main problem. You show us their normal world and their everyday, and then something happens that changes everything. This is called the inciting incident, and the character then makes a decision that commits them to the journey or the goal, and that is it. Who are they? What's their problem? What's their normal life? What thing happens? And how do they set about solving it? And, you know, I'll use my favourite character here, Mr. Walter White. If you've watched many of my videos, you know I love him. He's ordinary day. He's a teacher. He doesn't have a lot of money. He's kind of run down. What happens? He's diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. That changes his world. That's his inciting incident. What does he need to do? He needs to make money so that his wife can be cared for at least 10 years after his death. And he goes into the world of meth, creating meth. That is the beginning part, Act 1 of Walter White. You can even think about Harry Potter. His normal life is in the Dursleys, living under the stairs. You know, he's not very nice looked after. That's his normal every day. The Hogwarts letter shows up. Hagrid shows up, tells him he's a wizard. That's his insight and instinct. He has a choice. He can tell Hagrid to get lost, or he can go off and discover this whole wizarding world that he is apparently part of. Story begins. Act 2 is the middle. This is 50% of your book. This is where people talk about that messy middle where they struggle. It's the longest part of your book. But here's what happens in this part of your book. Your character tries to achieve their goals and faces obstacles. Things get progressively harder and more complicated. At the midpoint, which is the exact middle of your book, something big happens. Maybe it's a major revelation or a big setback, or maybe just a point of no return that changes everything. Basically, as you get into the second half of Act 2, it kind of gets darker and darker and the stakes get higher. You know, if this even happens in romance, you can see it as like the two love interests are kind of messing up and you're just waiting for it all to explode. And then everything falls apart right before Act 3 begins. Again, we'll go back to Harry Potter. Harry spends the middle of the first book learning about magic and the world. He's making friends, he's dealing with Snape, he's dealing with Malfoy. He's discovering clues to, depending on whether you're English or American, the Philosopher's or the Sorcerer's Stone. And then things just get increasingly dangerous and complicated for him and his friends. Act 3 is the end of your book and it's another 25%. This is where you have your confrontation or your climax. And your character will face their biggest challenge. This is where you'll show the resolution. We'll see how everything has changed and what has either been won or lost depending on what kind of book you're writing. And then we'll wrap all the loose ends up to keep the readers satisfied. And as long as you haven't done a complicated book, there should not be many loose ends. And again, going back to Harry Potter, he confronts Voldemort and Quirrell in the very last challenge. And obviously he nearly dies and then wakes up in the hospital wing. But we get closure on all the mysteries. We find out what Voldemort's back. We find out who Quirrell plays in this. We find out about Snape and all the other wonderings that we've been having. But Harry goes back to the Dursleys. And while he might be going back to his beginning, he's going back changed because he knows he's a wizard and he knows he will be going to Hogwarts again. And that's the cycle of the story. Basically, your character will change through the story. And that's it, really. You don't need any fancy devices or plot things. This simple act structure will just carry you through your very first book. Before you start writing your book, just sit down and just kind of figure these out. Number one, what happens at the beginning? How does my character's journey start? Number 2, what's the big midpoint change or revelation or thing that happens? Number 3, how does it end? What's the final confrontation and resolution? And really, you don't need to know every single scene that goes between those parts. These are, think of them like GPS coordinates. They are points that you need to get through to finish your book. Step 4, create your writing habit. So this is probably one a lot of beginner writers don't really think about. And it's creating your writing habit. And I'm going to be honest with you here, if you wait for inspiration, you're never going to finish your book. If you only write when you feel like it, you'll probably write maybe 10 pages and then give up. You don't wait for the muse, you have to kind of like force the muse to show up. If you get your backside in the chair, not necessarily every day. I like to say make sure you write on all of your writing days. Like I don't write Saturdays and Sundays, but I do write Monday to Friday. So on Monday to Friday I have to write, I have to get my backside in the chair, even if I can't be bothered, even if I really don't want to, I have to show up. And that's the kind of habit that you need to get into. So show up when you said you were going to show up. We basically just have to force the muse to sit down with us. Don't fall into this trap of I'll write when I have time, because if you do that you will never have the time. We just don't find the time for it because writing's hard. Even the seasoned writers like us, I have many days where I've got up in the morning, late, whatever, and I'm like, do you know what, I'm just going to write later, and I don't end up writing later. My day just runs on and I just don't get it done. So pick a time that works for you, something non-negotiable. Protect it from other people, that's a big one. I write from 6 AM in the morning till 9 in the morning. I won't go to social media, I won't do anything. I try not to answer my phone, but I do have children, so if they ring I'm going to answer, but mostly I won't be on messages, I won't be, I won't do anything. If someone's like, could you come and do such and such at 8 o'clock? I'm like, no, I'm going to do it at 9 when I finish my writing time. I protect that writing time like anything. So you need to kind of pick a time and keep showing up for yourself. Maybe even put it in your calendar like a doctor's appointment, or treat it like a date with a friend that you wouldn't, cancel on. And the other part of that is take away every obstacle that you could have. Like, I purposely leave my laptop in my office so that it's there for me in the morning. I have the same rituals and routines. I'll get a cup of tea, I'll get up, I'll brush my teeth, I'll put my dressing gown on. I'm like, I'm not getting dressed, I'm not doing my makeup, because if I do that, it's distracting. I go into my office, hair tied back, in my dressing gown, with my cup of tea, and I just write, and it's the same habit every day, and that's the kind of thing you need to do. The next one is track your progress visibly. So I had a spreadsheet, I still have a spreadsheet where I like to write my word count down every day. You do what works for you. It might be a calendar on a wall where you tick off every day that you've written. It might be writing down your word count. It might be writing how many pages you've wrote. It might be noting down how many minutes you wrote, or it doesn't matter. Find something that you can track as part of your writing habit and do that, because as those start to mount up, you start to feel proud of yourself, or at least I do. I love to see my word count growing, and I love to see, I mark in the diary, and I love to see that every day I've shown up and I've got words. Step 5, actually write the draft. I know that sounds shocking, right? But you've got your idea, you've got your goal, you've got your structure, you've got your habit. Now it's time to put the words on the page. And I'm going to remind you here, because if you're a perfectionist, your first draft is supposed to be bad. And I'm not saying that to be nice or encouraging or whatever. First drafts are always bad. Just remember that your favourite author with the perfect book has had a team of professional editors on that book. You have not. Don't try and compare your first draft. Don't think it's horrible, because it does not match whoever you admire. Your first draft is telling you the story. I want you to sit down and enjoy it. I want you to have a good time. I want you to write your story with the enthusiasm of a teenager who's writing their first book. Remember, it was like at age 13 when you wanted to write a story and all your hormones were flowing. So if you're a girl, it's probably a romance. Or when you were a kid and you were little and you were writing a story about something magic. Like, you didn't care if it was messy or if it was right or if there was a comma in the right place. It was just about telling the story, and you had so much fun with it. That's probably why you want to write a book. Go into it with that kind of enthusiasm. You're just telling the story. You're having a fun time. Don't even care if you put dialogue tags down. Don't care if there's a full stop or there's a spelling mistake. Nobody else is going to read this version. This is a version you can fix later. Give yourself the permission to write the most messiest draft possible. Use cliches, use clunky language. If there's a bit you don't know yet, like maybe there's a fight scene and you just can't figure out how to choreograph it, right, fight scene here, and then move on. The first draft is you telling the story. No one will ever see this version. So give yourself to write absolute rubbish. Use cliches, use clunky dialogue, use whatever you want. Make plot holes. Contradict yourself and have terrible pacing. Switch tenses because nobody cares. Let me give you some practical advice here if you get stuck, because you might get stuck. When you get stuck, let's say you're writing a scene in a restaurant, but you can't think of a good name for the restaurant, and you're not sure what kind of food they serve, and you're wondering if you need to research how kitchens work. You don't. Just write TK restaurant name and put it in brackets. TK stands for to come. It's what journalists use as placeholders. I sometimes use XXX where I want to put something so I can now just search it. I always put insert here, or whatever your placeholder might be. Something you can go and look up later. You can go and Google a restaurant name or how they work or whatever it is you need. It's the same thing with character names or technical facts or historical dates. Anything you need to research, just drop a TK in there and then come back to it later. And then if you have a scene that's really hard, just remember that you don't actually have to write in chronological order. Like I said about fight scene, if you can't think of a fight scene, just write fight scene here and move on to the next one. It might feel really weird to do that at first, but it's totally okay. You know, and if you've got a whole chapter that's giving you a problem, like say chapter 8, it's, you know, you're just stuck, it's just not working. Write a few bullet points of what you want to happen in that chapter and then move on to chapter 9 or 10. Write something you're excited about. Like, I know it said don't write new inspiration, but do follow your energy. You can come back and fill in the hard things later when you've got a little bit more momentum. And when you hate what you're writing, because this will also happen, and probably more than once, you'll reread the paragraph and think this is the worst thing that has ever been written in the entire English language of history, or whatever language you're writing. What am I even writing? Just keep writing anyway. That sentence, that paragraph, that page, it's fine, I promise you. I have had days where my writing has felt rubbish, it felt forced, it felt horrible, I've still shown up and I've still done it, and I've gone back the next day and I've reread it and I'm like, it's not actually that bad. Believe me, sometimes you're just too close to it, it's just your mood. What about when you're creatively stuck? Try these. Do a 10-minute brain dump. Set a timer and write whatever comes to mind. about your story, and it doesn't have to be scenes. It can just be thoughts, ideas, questions, whatever. Interview your character, write what you're stuck about, complain about the book, but just write for like 10 minutes about your book. If you know that stuff, make it worse. Ask yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen to my character right now? And then write that, because conflict is just like always interesting. You could even jump to the end of your book and write the final scene, the last hurrah. Some people might find that makes the book boring then, but you know, I've written the end of books before. I wrote the end of one story where I knew I was going to kill the main character off, but I knew if I spent an entire novel with this character, I wouldn't want to kill them off at the end. So I killed them off first and then wrote my way to it. And as I thought, by the time I got to their death, I was a little bit heartbroken. What about when you lose motivation? And this will probably happen too. You'll probably hit that point around 20,000, 30,000 words, usually somewhere in Act 2, because it's the hardest act, where you hate your book, you think it's pointless, it's useless, no one's ever going to want to read this book, it's the worst thing ever, why am I even bothering, why do I even think I could be a writer? It's called the muddy middle for a reason, and every single writer experiences it, I promise you, even now. It's not a sign that you are a crappy writer or never be an author, it's just normal path of where you are in your book. Decide if you're stuck here, think about why you wanted to write this book in the first place. What sparked that imagination? Go and look at your tracker and see how well you've done so far. Talk to an accountability partner if you have one. Message me, I'll give you some good old cheering. Take one day off, or 2 if you need it. Remind yourself that this feeling is temporary, but a finished book is permanent. Step 6, finishing and what comes next. Let's imagine you did it. You stuck with your habit for months. You showed up every single day that you said you would. You pushed through the muddy middle. You kept showing up even when it was hard. And finally you got to type the end on your manuscript. First things first, celebrate. And I mean it. Go and celebrate. Take yourself out for a nice dinner. Buy yourself that you've been looking for. Buy a cake for yourself with candles on it. Do something to celebrate. Tell everyone you know, post about it, make a big deal about it. I don't care. Just go and do something to celebrate. And you might wonder why, but because finishing a first draft is actually a massive accomplishment, and it's something that a lot of people who say they want to write a book never actually manage to do. So I want you to take a moment and remember it for yourself. Secondly, step away from your book. I know you're probably excited that you finished it and you want to jump straight into the edits and the rewrites and stuff. Don't. Let it sit for a little while, 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever it is. Give it some time to breathe and your brain some time to rest. You've just undergone something really amazing, so well done. But you need distance to be able to see this book clearly and to be able to edit it and shape it into the thing that you want it to be. During this time, don't think about your book. Go and read some books. Go and read your favourite authors. Work on other projects or whatever. Let your brain rest from this project. And then thirdly, when you come back to it, read your entire manuscript. Read it like a reader. So maybe print it out, send it to your kid or something like that. Don't read it on the machine that you wrote it on, because you will be tempted to edit, believe me. I used to just print mine out. Now I send them to my Kindle and I'll read them in bed. What you're looking for at this point is the big picture stuff. Does the plot make sense? Are there plot holes? Do my characters behave consistently? Have you kept the same name consistently? Is the pacing too slow? Is it too fast in other places? Does the ending feel earned? Or does it just come out of nowhere? Is it too coincidental? Are there entire scenes or chapters that don't move the story forward and your characters are literally just sitting having coffee? You're not worrying about grammar or word choice or spellings at this point. You're just worrying about the story. And this is somewhere where you could consider getting feedback, but do this cautiously. Do it with people who are going to be honest with you but not too critical, because you need to remind them that it's just the first draft of your book, or if you've edited it, it's the second draft. Don't let them compare it to polished books. You're just after story feedback here, so your first reader. Number 8, just going to go over some common beginner mistakes before we wrap up. Mistake number 1 is endless world building and planning. I've seen people literally spend years building the worlds that they're going to write in. They're creating character backstories, drawing these amazing maps, developing magic systems that they never write into the book. Planning is good, but at some point you're going to have to start writing the book. Sometimes planning can become a little bit of procrastination. You don't need to know every detail before you begin. In fact, I learn a lot of my details as I'm writing. Figure out the essentials basically, and then discover the rest of the story yourself. That's the amazing part about writing a story, is the discovery part, even if you're a plotter. Mistake number 2 is editing as you go, and I know someone will tell me, well, I edit and then go, I know, whatever. Not on your very first book. Do not edit as you go. You will tie yourself in knots. You will fill yourself full of self-doubt. Just write the story. Remember when I said write for yourself? This is that. just keep going, don't edit. I don't even fix typos. Write the whole thing first and get to the end. Then you can go back and edit. Mistake number 3 is comparing your book to other published books. I've touched on this a few times. You know, your book doesn't feel as good as your favourite book. Well, it's not gonna, you know, because they're edited and published and they've got a whole team behind them and you've just got you. So don't compare it. And I know it's really hard, but your first draft is never going to be as good as your favourite book that you ever read. Mine isn't. Most people's aren't, unless they've got some weird superpower that I don't know about. Mistake number 4 is waiting till the right time. There is never a perfect time to write your first book. Don't wait for retirement. Don't wait for the kids to leave home. Don't wait for, I don't know, when baby goes to school. There will always be demands on your time in your life. We have busy lives. We have families. We have friends. We have partners. We have jobs. We have all sorts of things, and something is always going to come up. Unless you're a hermit who lives on their own and has nobody bothering them, there's never going to be a right time to write a book except for now. You have to make time, and you have to decide that writing your first book matters enough for you to actually sit down and do it. It's the only way it's going to happen. Mistake number 5 is giving up when it gets hard. This book is going to get hard, I promise you. The middle will get really, really hard. You'll be like, can't write. You'll hate it. You'll think it's boring, it's pointless. All that stuff we've talked about. Keep going. Remember, it's normal. Mistake number 6, maybe, keeping your idea a secret. There are many beginners that think their book needs to be a secret because someone might steal it. Nobody's gonna steal your idea, I promise. Ideas are easy, they're the easy part. Like, I could say to you, go and write me a book about boy discovering he's a wizard. It's never gonna be the same as Harry Potter. It's the execution that actually makes the story, not the idea. 10 people could have the same book idea and we would have 10 different books, I promise. You'll write a book from your voice, your perspective, your life experience. So feel free to talk about your book and share your progress and be excited about it. Get feedback, build accountability. Secrecy actually doesn't protect you, it actually isolates you. Mistake number 7, the last one, is trying to write like someone else. Don't try and sound like your favourite author. Don't try and write how you think you're supposed to write. You are your voice. Your voice is natural to you and is distinct to you. The way you tell a story is your superpower. Yes, it's going to take time to develop. Yes, your voice will be rough at first, but your writing voice is uniquely yours. And that's what will make your book different from every other book out there. Write the way you tell a story to a friend because that's your voice. Trust it. And that's it. And I hope these tips help you to write your first book. And if you are writing your first book, I wish you the best of luck. It's the most exciting and scariest thing both at the same time. I remember writing my first book and I was so addicted to it. I, couldn't wait to get home from work to write it, and I hope that's how it feels for you. If you are writing your first book, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to cheer you on and whatever. If you are struggling or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me because I love to help other authors. I have so much experience that, I love to share it with people. But I am going to leave that there for you, and yeah, wish you all luck, and I will see you next time.